Hello, good afternoon. I'm live. It is Friday, the 17th of March 2023. That's St. Patrick's Day. I hope the weather clears a little bit. I'm reading out of Joan Grant, Scarlet Feather. Joan Grant lived from 1907 till 1989, and she was a seer. She used to write books of her far memories, and she had some amazing books written, or she wrote some amazing books. This one is, Scarlet Feather, is about a tribe many thousands of years ago in the west of America, and I have been writing about Raki and Piyannah, reading about Raki and Piyannah, who grew up together, really, they're cousins, and Piyannah's mother died. Raki's mother is dead too, and they've just had a battle, and now Piyannah has to do the ordeal of a scarlet feather because her and Raki want to rule a tribe together, male and female, which is a great no-no in those days. Anyway, so she is halfway through her through her ordeal, where she will gain a feather which will then allow her to run a tribe with Raki. She's about 17 now. I realized that I must have entered the first of the underground caverns where the river formed a lake. The torch still smoldered, and after I had blown on it, the flame flared up. The lake was large, more than 3 times wider than the river in the open country, and widening as I drifted further on. Here the walls did not rise sheer, and at their feet was a narrow beach of sand, sloping up to coarse gravel. I decided to stay here and rest before going on. Now that the immediate danger was past, my arms and legs felt suddenly weak and demanded time to recover from the strain of the roaring waters. I used the rope which Tikini had given me to make the canoe fast to a spike of rock that jutted from the main face. After a few moments' rest, I decided to climb along the shelf so as to find out the nature of the next obstacle I had to pass. It was an easy climb, though between the stretches of gravel there were outcrops of rocks. The torch showed that in winter the water level was much higher, for there were marks of erosion above my head. For the first time I had a chance to think of demons, to think how terribly alone I was in this echoing darkness, for underground with only a torch for a companion. Far underground, a terrible sound wailed through the caverns. "It is only a bat," I said aloud, and heard myself answer, "No bat makes a sound like that." The echo answered, "No bat makes a sound like that, like that." "You are only an echo," I shouted. "Only an echo, the cavern agreed. "I'm not afraid." But the shout I had tried to make arrogant answered, "Not afraid, not afraid." Then there was silence among the sound of rushing water. I thought I heard Narok's drum in the distance, and realized it was only my own heart. Again came the terrible wailing cry. It must be a bird, I thought desperately, or the wind blowing through a fissure in the rock. It can't be a demon, because Mother and Buccaccini would never let a demon attack me here alone in the dark. Again the wail echoed and re-echoed. "Even if you are a demon," I shouted back, "I am not frightened of you. You sound unhappy and in pain. Are you in pain, you miserable demon?" The mocking echoes mimicked my voice, and I shouted even louder, "Are you in pain?" This time the answer was louder. There was a word in it instead of only a wail. "Pain, pain." Demons cannot speak in a human voice. Suddenly I realized what made that noise. It was a human voice distorted by echoes. Cha, the arrogant, calling to a squaw to help him. Twice I had to wait for an answering sound before I could be sure of the direction. To my relief, I saw that the river flowed into a further cavern, through a much wider opening where the water was not very turbulent. It was too wide to cross, so now that I knew Cha must be on the far side of the lake, I shouted to him. that I had to go back to fetch my canoe, but would soon be with him. There was no answer. I shouted again, but the echo of my own voice, dying into silence, were the only response. It was easier going back the way I had come, for I knew the way over each jutting rock. As I had hoped, there was calm water again beyond the main current, but the lake extended so far beyond the narrow side of Torchlight that I never discovered its full extent. I secured the canoe as near to the entrance to the second cavern as I dared, so that I could search every part of the sloping shelf of gravel, which was wider here than it had been on the other side of the cavern. I began to think that Char must have been swept away by the water since I last heard him. Once I had wanted to kill him, yet now I found myself hoping fervently that he was still alive. He was lying half out of the water, and although unconscious, he was still breathing. There was a thin trickle of blood down the side of his face, but this only came from a cut above the right eye. I felt his head and found there was no swelling or any other sign of a wound. I ran my hands down his arm and over his ribs. It was only when I took him by the shoulders to drag him further up the bank that I saw his legs. They had been crushed above the knees. Splinters of bone were sticking through the flesh. I had seen men injured before, and Dorok had taught me how to sew up long gashes in flesh with steady hands. But now I doubled over and vomited. I had wanted Char to be alive, and now he was terrible. He was terrible because he was not dead. They might be able to cut off his legs. Perhaps Yellowskins are kind to their half-brothers, and he is the son of their chief. If he were an animal, I should kill him to set him free of his body. But he is a wounded man, and I must be succored. He moaned a terrible moan of pain that is beyond the limit of courage. I found myself to examine his legs more closely. There was no chance of his being able to use either of them again. They were pulped above the knee. If I had not seen them myself, I should have never believed that rock and water could have crushed with such a savage a grip. I could not leave him here to die alone. If I could take him back to his own people, they would have nothing to offer him except pity. Pity he would never be able to accept. He had sworn to make a mockery of an arrogant squaw who dared to demand a voice in the Feathered Council. If I rescued him, the mockery he would suffer, even as a cripple, would be more cruel than hornets. We are all children of the great hunters, I said aloud. Their laws belong to both man and animal. I must have the courage to show Char the same compassion that I would give a wounded deer. I must send him to the other side of the water. I must ask someone to look after him. Barakechi, because of our friendship, take this man and teach him the laws of the West, for he is a yellow skin and may have no friends of his own in your country. Char stirred. I thought he was going to open his eyes before I brought the pointed stone crashing down on his temple. He sighed and his body twitched. Then he was free of the legs that could no longer torture him. The legs were only dead meat, and he could walk in freedom. It was only when I realized that as I had asked the great hunters to take him in my name, they would expect me to offer his body the proper funeral rituals. He was a brave who had died through an ordeal. He had earned the right of the cleansing fire and the protection of the death canoe. His body was still my responsibility, though even it was dead, and my canoe must carry us both. The ledge was wide enough for me to drag the canoe out of the water. He was heavy, but I managed to lift him into it, and there was room for me to kneel across his body. The canoe rode lower in the water, which added to the danger, but not sufficiently for me to be able to leave him. His head was in the stern, his eyes were shut, but the jaw sagged open against the chest. I could feel the pulped flesh of his legs against my knees. They were still warm and slimy with clotting blood. I had gone beyond fear into desperate endurance. I knew that it was already decided whether I was to escape from these terrible caverns or to die with the man I had killed. If I died, Mother would be surprised to see me enter the land beyond the sunset in the company of a yellow-skin. Steadily the canoe kept on through the second cavern. I saw ahead of me the opening into the third, and I knew I had come to the place of the whirlpool. "It is round as a cooking pot," Dorok had said. "Keep close against the wall and try to reach the opening in the far side. Keep to the side or you will be drawn down into the black water." I felt the brow swing to the left and had to fling down the torch so as to paddle with all my strength to keep close to the side. If there were any rocks sticking out from the face, I knew the canoe would be torn open. Twice I felt the canoe touch the wall and fended it off with my left hand. The whirlpool was trying to pull me into its vortex. As I swept around, trying to judge where the opening was that might lead me to safety. If only I knew where it was, I could make a supreme effort to break out of the circle of death. Suddenly I realized that at one place in the wall the darkness was not absolute. Was there really a faint grayness? It might be the entrance to a tunnel. If I was wrong and managed to drive the canoe towards it, I would smash it against the rock. Now I thrust on the paddle and felt it bend under the strain. The canoe leapt forward, away from the whirlpool. The tunnel twisted like a snake. The roof was getting lower, but the light was brighter. I had come through the darkness. Ahead of me, I saw a bar of brilliant light close to the surface of the water. I had to fling myself flat on Char's body. The splintered thigh bones crunched under my naked breasts. The roof was so low that as we shot into the open, I felt a long strip of skin torn from my back. Again, I seemed to hear Dorok's voice. "Keep to the south side of the river when you come out of the darkness." I seized the paddle and stroked with desperate speed. Close ahead was the white water of the rapid. As I came to the crest, I saw beyond it people waiting on the bank. They must have seen me, for I heard them shouting above the noise of the rushing water. Dorok was right. There was a path between the cruel rocks, deep green water, such as I had often known, rocks that I could see in the clear light of day. Between two plumes of white water, I shot forward into calm. I saw Raki running down the bank towards me. He caught me in his arms. I forgot I was a Scarlet Feather. I was his squaw who had come home to him. Raki, his arm round my shoulders, led me up to the steep bank and past an outcrop of rocks which hid us from the others who waited there with him. I was shuddering and my teeth chattered as though I were half frozen. He held me close, soothing me as though I was a child trying to wake from a dream of demons. "I'm so sorry, Raki. I wasn't frightened until I knew I was safe. It's my body, not me, that is frightened now. So don't be ashamed of me. Please don't be ashamed. The others didn't see I was crying, did they?" They saw a Scarlet Feather who had gone to clean the blood from her wounds before she returns to receive their homage. "But I'm not wounded. There's bright blood on your back, where a long strip of skin has been torn off. Your breast and thighs are covered with dried blood. Are you badly hurt?" His voice was sharp with anxiety. "You couldn't talk if you were badly hurt, could you?" I looked down and realized that I must be a terrible sight. No one who loved me. To one who loved me. "It is not my blood, it's Char's. I had to lie on him, and the roof of the last tunnel was so low. The blood clots were like slugs in Raki." I heard myself laughing and couldn't stop. Great purple slugs that I had to crush with my breasts. "Quiet, Piyannah." I didn't want to laugh at Char, but the laughter shook me as though I were a tree in a gale, too strong for it to withstand. Raki picked me up and I clung to him, trying to stifle against his shoulder the horrible sound I was making. I heard a splash as he stepped into a small pool, and then felt the sting of sharp water as he held me under a little waterfall. I gasped as the water poured over me, and then went limp. "Lie still, Piyannah." He rested my head in the crook of his arm and scrubbed me with sand, and then with handfuls of leaves until my body was clean. Then I was lying on warm turf with him beside me. Everything was safe and ordinary again. The caverns were no longer part of me. They were only a story to be told at the watchfires of the future. For I could look at them through the eyes of a new Piyannah. "Shall I tell them that I killed Char?" I said. "Not until we've housed Nakachik." "Where is he?" "Waiting to give you the Scarlet." "Does he know I have won?" Raki smiled. "He waded into the river to catch the brow of your canoe. but you seem only to see me. Takini and Georgie and Dolok were there too. But they were on the other side of the caverns. How did they reach here so quickly? Look at the sun. It has traveled so a long way since you went into the darkness. So that's the end of this chapter about her ordeal in the dark caverns. Bye.